Hey there! Subscribe to my channel and also press this bell icon so you can get latest video notifications. And this is absolutely free.
The test is in 4 parts: Part 1, Part 2, Part 3, and Part 4. Now look at Part 1.
Part 1.
You will hear a man asking for information about language classes over the phone. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 4. Now we shall begin. You should answer the questions as you listen, because you will not hear the recording a second time. Listen carefully and answer questions 1 to 4.
Good morning, Globetrotters Language School. How may I help you?
Yes, I was wondering if you could give me some information on language classes.
Certainly. What language are you interested in studying?
Well, that's the thing. I'm interested in learning Japanese, but I'd also like to improve my Chinese. I don't know which to study right now.
Maybe the class schedule will help you decide. Did you want to study in the morning, afternoon, or evening?
I work in the evenings, so mornings or afternoons would be best.
Then that decides it for you. We offer an advanced Chinese class, but it meets on Wednesday and Friday evenings.
I couldn't do that. When do the Japanese classes meet?
We have beginning Japanese on Tuesday and Thursday mornings. No, wait, that's intermediate Japanese. Which level do you want? Advanced?
No, beginning, definitely. I know some Chinese and some French, but I'm a real beginner with Japanese.
Well then, are you free Monday, Wednesday and Friday mornings? That's when the beginning Japanese classes meet. We also have intermediate French on Friday mornings.
I could do those mornings, but I'd prefer afternoon. Don't you have anything in the afternoon?
We have intermediate Japanese class on Wednesday and Friday afternoons.
I really need a beginner class, so I'll take the morning Japanese class. Could you give me an idea of the cost? What would be the tuition for the Japanese class?
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 5 to 10. Now listen and answer questions 5 to 10.
The beginning level classes meet 3 times a week, so they cost a bit more than the other levels. For a 6-week course, the cost would be $575.
That's a bit steep.
If it's hard for you to pay that much, you could sign up for just 4 weeks of class and pay $410, or you could pay for 1 week at a time at $125 a week.
That comes out to be much more expensive once you add up all the weeks.
That's true. You can save money by registering for 2 levels together. For example, pay for your beginning and intermediate classes now, and you'll get 12 weeks of class for just $1,050.
That's not a bad deal, but I can't come up with that much money at once. I'll just pay for the 6-week course.
Fine. That class begins next week, so you need to register right away.
Can't I register over the phone?
No, I'm sorry. We don't take phone registrations. What you'll need to do is visit the school office today or tomorrow. Bring a cheque for the tuition and a photo ID.
Is that all?
Yes, we'll give you a registration form to complete, or you can save time by visiting our website and downloading the form there. Complete it and bring it into the office with your cheque.
Great. I'll stop by this afternoon.
Fine. When you arrive, ask for Mr. Lindsay. He's in charge of student registration.
I'm sorry, Mr. Who?
Mr. Lindsay, spelled Lindsay.
Thank you for your help.
Thank you. We'll look forward to seeing you in class.
That is the end of part 1.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 2.
Part 2.
You are going to hear a tutor talking to a group of philosophy students. First, look at questions 11 to 13. For these questions, complete the blank spaces in the table as you listen to the first part of the talk.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
My name is Dr. Russell, and I am your tutor for philosophy this year. I think we're all here. Let's see, 5, 6, 7, yes, that's everyone. Before we look at the 3 lectures you've had on philosophy this week, I would just like to run through a few things about what you can expect of me as tutor and what in turn we expect of you. As for myself, my function as tutor is to help you in all things relating to your work in the philosophy course. The help that I am able to give is, of course, mainly academic. For personal matters, I can refer you to other support services in the university, ranging from counselling to welfare. One thing that I would point out is that if you feel that you need to talk to someone, no matter how insignificant it is, don't leave it. Oh, and the last thing is, if you do need to make an appointment, the times are listed on the door of my room. You just write your name in a time slot. But I would point out that the appointment slots get booked up quite quickly. If it's urgent, catching me between sessions is the best idea. That way we can sort something out quickly. No questions?
Before the talk continues, look at questions 14 to 20. As you listen to the second part of the talk, answer the questions. For questions 14 to 19, circle the correct letter, A, B, or C.
OK. As regards you as students, the tutorials are voluntary. You're not obliged to attend, but you are encouraged to do so. Last year, for the first time, a register was kept of students attending lectures, and this year tutors are being asked to keep a register of tutorial attendance. This is not a formal register, and not all tutors will be doing it, but in the philosophy department, all of us have chosen to keep registers. Another point that's being emphasised this year is punctuality. When we did exit questionnaires, we found that people arriving late for tutorials and lectures was the single most annoying thing for the majority of students. I would therefore ask you to try to be on time for the tutorials, and for all your other classes for that matter. As regards the tutorials themselves, we will have a review of the philosophy lectures of the week before, with the discussion being led by one of you each week. There is, of course, some planning involved, but you should rely primarily on the notes you made at the lectures. This will not take up the whole of the 90 minutes allocated to the tutorial. For the rest of the time, we will look at a particular philosopher, period or concept for which you will be expected to do some preparation each week. This will range from reading about a particular individual or concept to preparing a brief outline on a subject of your choice. How much you put into this depends on you, but we're not expecting in-depth analysis at this stage. Are there any questions so far?
I'd just like to ask whether the work we do in the tutorials counts towards our continuous assessment, and if so, how much?
I was just coming on to that point. All the work you do in the way of essays and project work that is graded counts towards your continuous assessment grades. The mini-presentations and lecture discussions will not be graded, but obviously, as time goes on, these activities will, I hope, have an impact on your work, and hence your scores. Does that answer your question?
Basically, yes, but what about...
That is the end of part 2.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 3.
Part 3.
You are going to hear a lecture on ecology.
First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 25. Now, listen carefully and answer questions 21 to 25.
Good afternoon. I'd like to turn it over to Dr. Carey, who will talk about the programme in restoration ecology.
Thanks, Chris. A lot of people think that human beings can do whatever they want to the environment. But as Aldo Leopold taught, land is a system of interdependent parts which should be regarded as a community and not a commodity. Well, that idea has influenced what we teach here in our program, where students come from all over the world to learn about restoring native plant communities back into an ecologically natural state. This field is therefore a combination of formal science with practical applications, and that is quite attractive to many people. We have students, for example, from many different nations who come just to take part in this unique program. Our location is also quite unique. We have the world's oldest restored native plant community in Curtis Prairie at the Wisconsin Arboretum. Some say that this is proof that the science of restoration ecology was birthed in Wisconsin. Well, that may be oversimplified, but our reputation is strong. But students don't have to study prairies only. One student, Edmund Mukala from the Congo, came to study restoring ancient wetlands in the Congo using knowledge gained from historic samples of the soil seed bank. Not all the seeds survived, but some can remain dormant for many years. Mr. Mukala wanted to find out what type of community would be most similar to that ancient seed bank. He has recently returned to the Congo and is now cooperating with the government to implement his findings.
Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 26 to 30. Now listen and answer questions 26 to 30.
So the only prerequisite for doing research here is that it is a native plant community. That means not just prairies, but wetlands, woodlands, savannas, and other environments. We're proud of the diversity of research topics in our program. And we continue to grow. This year we have 32 new students from 8 different countries. When students first arrive, they begin rigid coursework in statistics, ecology, plant identification, and the theory of landscape change. Then they take part in internships at local conservation agencies such as the Arboretum, the Nature Conservancy, the Parks Department, and others. We find internships to be crucial in helping students apply the knowledge they have gained in the classroom. And we're proud to say that, since the beginning, we have graduated 277 students with master degrees from our programs and 122 students with PhDs. Some have gone on to bigger and better things. One graduate is now the director of the Worldwide Fund for Nature in China. Another is the director of Parks Development in California. And others now lead their own research departments in universities around the world.
That is the end of part 3.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 4.
Part 4.
9. Listen to the second part of our lecture. As you listen, complete the notes below.
First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40. Now listen carefully and answer questions 31 to 40.
River dance is not just an expression of self-confidence, a kind of culturally interesting pop song. It tells the story of a people through song and dance. It tells the story of the people whose spirit was broken by an event which occurred in the middle of the last century, but continued to affect the society until 1961, the Great Famine. What is a famine? In 1840, the official population of Ireland was 8 million. They were largely poor and living in the countryside. They were beginning to have an interest in independence, and perhaps had things been different, Ireland might have been independent much earlier. But there was a serious problem in the agricultural system. All crops were grown to pay the rent of the land, and all that was grown to eat was the potato. This was fine until the potato crop failed, as it did from 1845 to 1848. The stories of what happened in those times live on in the popular culture of Ireland, and I won't tell them here, but the result was that 2 million people died or left the country by 1851. When you realise that the population continued to go down until 1961, you can realise what a disastrous effect this famine had on the people. Compared with China, imagine if the famine of 1960 reduced the population by a quarter and it kept falling to less than half of its pre-famine figure. Anybody with ideas left and went to England, America or Australia. The people left behind were broken by their experiences and, in effect, the famine and its consequences put an end to all serious development in the country until well into this century. The Irish in Ireland lost all hope and self-confidence, and much of our modern culture is about the sadness of that time and the sorrow of saying goodbye to those who left and left well into this century. Ireland has the highest emigration rate of any country in Europe for the last 2 centuries. We even have an expression for this saying goodbye. It is called the American wake. It means the ceremony, like that of a funeral for someone going to America, because you will never see him or her again. Do you know why there is Irish music on the film Titanic? It is because most of the people killed were Irish. The leaving continued until the 1970s because independence in 1921 was followed by a civil war and an economic depression. Almost every family in Ireland has relatives abroad, and up to the 60s in some places, of a class of 30 graduating from high school all left. Along the west coast, closed-up houses, from that time falling into ruin, are still common.
That is the end of part 4.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.